All right, so you know how some stories just keep coming back around? Well, get this. Today's deep dive takes us right back to one of those stories. The question of whether Big Meech, the head honcho of BMF, flipped, became an informant. It's a question that's been floating around for what seems like forever, but now with everything that's happened, it's blown up all over again.
Yeah, it's become a real thing, this whole did he snitch or didn't he?
Yeah.
It's fascinating, honestly, how much this still matters.
It's like, to really grasp why this is still so relevant, we kind of have to go back, right? Remind ourselves about Big Meech and what BMF was all about.
Exactly. See, back in '85, Detroit, that's where it all started. Demetrius Big Meech Flannery and his brother, Terry, Southwest T as he was known, they built this operation, and man, did it grow fast.
They're crazy fast. From something small, local, to this massive drug trafficking organization. Their reach, it went nationwide, and they were woven into hip-hop, the whole culture. We're talking hundreds of people involved all over the country. Huge.
And let's be real, they lived that life. The stories, the wealth, the houses, the cars, the parties, it all built this image. An image that made them almost larger than life.
Totally. But that kind of lifestyle, it's flashy, it draws attention, especially from the feds, and eventually that's what brought them down back in 2005. Big investigation, the whole 9 yards.
Right. But here's the thing. Even after they were locked up, BMF, the story, it didn't go away. It kind of got bigger, if you can believe it. Books, documentaries, And then 50 Cent comes along with that BMF series.
Which, brings us to the big question now. Why are we talking about this again today?
Big Meech, he finally gets out of prison, October 2024, right? Then boom, photo with Rick Ross. Then that's when things really got interesting.
Yeah, interesting is one word for it. 50 Cent didn't exactly take it well, right? He goes public, accusing Meech of snitching, even threatened to shut down his own show.
That's some serious heat right there.
It's a big deal, These accusations, they have consequences, they carry weight. So let's get into it. This snitching accusation, where is it coming from? What I've seen is that 50 Cent seems to be basing his whole argument on the testimony of this woman, Tammy Cowan. She's identified as CS1 in the court documents. He's pointing to her, her involvement is evidence of Big Meech flipping.
That's the core of 50's argument, yeah. But here's where things get a bit murky. When you look at the publicly available records for Big Meech himself, well, there's a different story there. The folks pushing back against this whole snitching narrative, they're saying his paperwork, it's clean, no direct evidence of him giving up names, nothing like, hey, bust him, bust him, bust him.
So it comes down to this, right? Did someone else give information that led to arrests? Or did Big Meech actually point the finger himself, give up specific people? And that's where I think the whole thing with Terrence Gangster Williams comes in. He did time with Big Meech, right?
Yeah, and Williams' perspective, it's important, It comes from someone who was actually there, in that world, in prison with Meech. And he is adamant Meech didn't cooperate, period. He's pretty vocal about what he sees as this unfair labeling of people as rats. He even says, by prison rules and standards, even if Tammy Cowan did give information, it doesn't automatically make Big Meech a snitch. It doesn't mean he sat down with the feds and pointed fingers.
So it's more about what role did Meech actually play? Did he directly give up names for a better deal, or was it something else, something less direct, like Williams is saying?
That's it. And there's this other thing that keeps coming up. The story that Big Meech could have gotten away before the feds got him, but he didn't. Some folks, they see that as a sign he hadn't made any deals.
Right. If he'd cooperated, he probably would have been told to disappear.
Right.
Maybe even been under some kind of protection. So him staying put, facing those charges, some people think that shows a different kind of loyalty.
It does, doesn't it? It suggests he was playing by a certain code. A code that might not make sense to everyone, but it was there.
So now, we gotta talk about Big Meech's reputation inside prison. Gangster Williams, he has some really interesting things to say about that.
Oh, he does. He paints this picture of Big Meech as someone who wasn't just any other inmate. He had respect, serious respect within the prison. Williams even uses the phrase, straight up respect. It makes you think he wasn't seen as someone who'd broken the rules, the unspoken ones.
And it's not just that people were wary of him or scared. Williams talks about how 25 guys would regularly work out with Big Meech, hang out. It wasn't like he was forcing them or anything. It's like he was a leader, even in there, someone people wanted to be around. Pretty telling, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It shows he held on to a certain kind of power, even behind bars. And there's something else Williams says that really struck me. He says Big Meech was telling people he wouldn't help them with connections or anything on the outside once they got out. It's like he was focused on doing his time, not trying to set himself up for the future by making deals. which, you might expect if he'd cooperated with the feds.
And then there's that whole escape thing. That he could have just bolted but chose to stay, the whole solid thing. It all feeds into this narrative that goes against the idea of him working with the law to get a lighter sentence.
Right. It's a powerful counter-narrative, for sure. And it's important to remember, these are personal accounts, but they do raise some serious questions.
Definitely. Okay, so I think to really understand all of this, we need to go back even further, How did BMF get so big, and then how did it all fall apart? You mentioned they started out in Southwest Detroit, Big Meech and his brother, Southwest T.
Right, they had this direct line to Mexican drug suppliers. And it wasn't just small-time stuff. They were high up in the operation, which allowed them to grow and get rich really fast.
And they didn't hide it either.
No.
The stories about their lifestyle are kind of crazy. Multiple houses, tons of expensive cars, the parties. Remember that jungle-themed birthday bash at Magic City with the white tigers it's still talked about? Shows you just how big and bold they were.
Yeah, it was all part of the image, the brand. But behind it all, there were tensions, apparently, between Big Meech and Southwest T. It seems they had different ideas about where BMF should go. Eventually, they split the operation. Southwest T took the West Coast, kept the Mexican connection strong, while Big Meech ran Atlanta and the whole entertainment scene.
And I guess, while that might have made them more efficient in some ways, it probably also made them more vulnerable in the long run. While they're building this empire, living large, the feds are watching. And they're not just watching, they're building a case, a serious one, wiretaps, informants, bank records, surveillance, the whole deal.
And eventually, in 2005, they had enough. Big Meech, Southwest T, and a bunch of their people, they were arrested. And the charges, they weren't messing around. The big one was the continuing criminal enterprise statute. That one's for major drug operations, the kind that come with heavy sentences. So yeah, there was a lot of pressure on everyone involved to flip, to cooperate. Big Meech and Southwest T, they both ended up with 30-year federal sentences.
And even before the arrests, there were chances for them to get away. I remember reading that Southwest T got arrested first, and Big Meech had time to leave the country. But he didn't, went to Miami instead, ended up getting caught in Texas. Him choosing to face the charges, it plays into that whole idea of him having a code, a certain loyalty.
Totally. It's like he was committed to the organization, his reputation.
Yeah.
Right or wrong, that's how he operated. And then there's what happened after sentencing. Southwest T, he got out early, 2020, because of COVID. But Big Meech, his request for compassionate release, that got denied.
But even with both of them out now, the BMS story, it's still got people's attention. It's become part of the culture, inspiring all kinds of media, and it's got people fascinated. And that, I guess, brings us right back to where we started. 50 Cent and his reaction to Big Meech being released and hanging out with Rick Ross.
And the timing of 50 Cent's reaction, that's what gets me. The stuff about Tammy Cowan cooperating, that's been public for a while now. It makes you wonder, why is 50 Cent's son suddenly all about pushing the snitching narrative? And if the information was already out there, why make a whole series about BMF, only to threaten to end it because Big Meech and Rick Ross took a photo together?
It does make you think, is 50 Cent really convinced that Big Meech cooperated? Or is there something else going on? Maybe some personal beef, who knows? It's hard to say for sure.
And let's not forget, Big Meech, he's said publicly he never snitched. He's denied it.
So we've gone pretty deep here today. We've really looked at this whole debate about Big Meech and whether he worked with the feds. No direct evidence in his paperwork, strong denials from people like Gangster Williams who were there, saw it all firsthand. And then you've got these accusations resurfacing and the questions about why, what's the motivation?
At the end of the day, whether Big Meech cooperated, it's still open to interpretation. There's no clear-cut answer based on what's publicly available. You have to weigh the evidence, the different accounts, the stories that have come out. It's complicated.
And that's what we want you to think about, Consider everything we've talked about, the motivations, the investigation, the different players. It shows how, even with a lot of information out there, it's tough to really know what went down. We encourage you to think about the different perspectives, the evidence, and come to your own conclusions. That's what makes this so interesting, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Anytime.